Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Doctors of Running podcast, where we, a group of doctors of physical therapy, discuss the art and science of running and the stuff that we put on our feet. Tonight at the round table, we have Dr. David Salas and myself. I'm Nathan Brown. We are going to be bringing you ultimately a mailbag episode, but we have a few things and some housekeeping that we want to take care of. I think David has a bit of a confession to make. He has completely defected and become a pure Apple guy in the last year, has an Jesus. Apple laptop. He's got an Apple phone. Oh my gosh. An iPhone, Apple phone. So just good news for all the people out there. David has now come to what I call the good side.
I'm not an Apple shill.
And he is not an Apple shill. But we're going to move forward. That is the housekeeping for the day.
Yes, I will just say there are some very specific reasons as to why said devices are with me. But I think operating systems wise, I think, and ergonomic wise, I think I do still like some of the other products. They're all good. They're all really good. But yeah, there's some very specific reasons that have led me to use said products.
It's great. We're all excited for you. But we are going to move to our first segment, which is our In for Testing segment. It's the shoes that we are currently testing. This is powered by and fueled by Scratch Labs. And so we are going to be talking about the shoes that we are testing right now. So for you, what is one or two shoes that you're currently testing, and do you have any initial thoughts on them?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm always saying I can't talk about it, but I'm finishing up a round of some of the wear testing stuff that obviously I can't talk about. So a large majority of my runs have actually been in those. But with that said, there has been a couple things I've been trying to sprinkle in. And so we got the Metaspeed review out recently with the Metaspeed Edge Tokyo. Next up will be the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo, finishing up the proper mileage and getting you guys the full review. And then from a training mileage standpoint, it'll probably transition into the Topo Vista, which is a trail running model. It looks nice. It's built well. I think it's actually going to be really nice. Cool. I just got to finish up a couple of other things first, and that'll probably be next on the docket.
Nice. Yeah, for me, I just got done testing and writing the review for the New Balance Rebel V5, which was the first Rebel that really worked for me, and it was actually awesome. I'm probably going to run my half marathon in it this upcoming Sunday. I'm not racing it, but it'll be a good one to run it in. And then the shoe that I've been testing since then is the Aero Burst from Skechers. It's the first time that we've tested Skechers stuff in a while, and this is kind of their next iteration of some of their Hyperburst stuff. They're using Hyperburst Ice, which they've used in previous models. I don't know if they've changed the formula at all, but this is their higher stack shoe, and it's got a mild rocker, mild flexibility. It's a pretty solid max stack shoe. I would say of all the shoes that they've come out with in the last 5 years so far, this is the one that's working best for me and my foot. Part of that is because they've been putting that arch fit in, and I think their arch fit in the past has been actually pretty pronounced, where I really, at least for my foot, I really feel the arch fit, and it is bothersome for me. But this one feels much more mild. So because of that, I've been able to run in it a bit more. The platform is wide enough, so it's pretty stable. It's got a mild rocker, so it just feels pretty smooth for easy effort. So more testing that I have to do on it. I've got like 3 runs in on it so far. One of them was a longer run, so it does have a 10 miler in them, but I've got more to do. But that one's been pretty solid so far. The next thing that we wanted to do is we test a lot of apparel. We don't necessarily put it all out there all the time, just because we can't put our DPT hats on as much when it comes to apparel. And that's like really what we want to do, is on the education side of how biomechanics and stuff interacts. Clothing does not allow us to do that unless you have super restrictive shorts or something like that, or pants. But what we wanted to talk about is, for us, what have been the things that have stood the test of time that we just really love and keep going back to? So what do you have from an apparel standpoint that you really love?
Yeah, so I've got a couple things just here to my left. So if I go off screen here, that's why. But the first one here is, actually, that's not the one I wanted to grab. This is, so the Seisky 5-inch, Seisky 5-inch. I don't know how to say that. Someone can tell me how.
I think Seisky.
Yeah.
They're so good.
Yeah, dude, I have 2 pairs.
They're really good.
Phenomenal. I go right back to them every time. The other one too, which is much more cost effective, because the Seisky ones, they do cost a pretty penny. They're like, what, 80-ish, I think. I think, retail. Just the basic Mizuno 5-inch.
It is simple.
Dude, I've gone to these for so long. Like, we've had these for literally years now. And I wear them all the time. I'm kind of like a 5-inch boy when it comes to like easy runs, you know? But for longer efforts and for quicker things, I usually will go to 3-inch shorts. So the Rabbit 3-inch, I think I can't remember if these are the Speedies or not. Yeah. I don't think it is because it has the little pocket thing. I think it's like the Fuel and Fly. I think that's maybe.
Yep.
Yeah. So these ones are solid. Love these. And then one that's really grown on me that was very almost like surprising is the Diadora 3-inch ones.
Oh, I haven't tested those. Cool.
These things are nice. Super lightweight. They wick the moisture incredibly well. Like they are very, very good shorts actually. Yeah. So I've been loving those. And then for shirts, because I always have to have more options than anybody actually cares to listen about.
David, what's your top shoe? Well, here's my 8 honorable mentions.
So I don't think this is going to come with any surprise for any of the listeners. On performance tee, short sleeve. Yeah. I'm kind of short sleeve gang, honestly. I feel like I wear a lot of short sleeves. I don't actually singlet up that often unless I'm going fast.
Yeah.
And then anything Rabbit performance short sleeve tees, you know, I don't know what they actually call the shirts because I feel like they kind of change it every once in a while where it's like, they'll call it like race pace or they'll call it like,
but those are the that's the non-easy tee version. That's like their performance.
Not easy. Yeah. This is the performance material. Yeah. This is like the singlet material, but the short sleeve. So, and this is an older one. So if you're looking for this color, you probably won't find it, but I've got a handful of those, even back from like the Rabbit Hoka days, when they had their collaboration, and that material is solid and it has literally stood the test of time. You could look at that thing. I've run so many miles in it and like it's still standing. The other one, now this one is a singlet and it's technically on the Bandit lineup. So it's the ASICS Bandit collab.
Oh, so it's Bandit.
It's technically Bandit. Yeah. I don't know exactly what the singlet model is. Someone out there could probably tell me, but I think it's just their basic kind of one, but it has a very lightweight synthetic feel on it. Wicks moisture really well. So love that. And the last one for track days, because for those of you that know me, I will run track workouts in polos sometimes. Is literally like, I think it's the Metal Tech material from Lululemon.
Oh wow.
So
hilarious.
I've literally run 40 miles.
That's hilarious.
So it's like, yeah, I will rip in a polo. I was actually thinking of getting a DOR screened on this.
Oh, that's a fun idea.
Yeah, I don't know someone would have to be willing to just do one, though. I don't know how many people would be willing to just do a single piece, but that's what I got. Cool. What about you?
It's funny. So I thought of it a little bit differently than you, which is fine. My brain went to like, what are the companies that have really stood out for me? And when I think about, and kind of just like anything I've gotten from them has been good, but I grabbed a couple pieces from those. But then the other thing for me, so like price really matters and then longevity. So I don't think you could, maybe one of these you could still buy, but most of them are like a couple years old at this point. So Rabbit is one of the companies for me because I think they definitely cost more than like going to Old Navy or going to Target or something like that. But it's also not like $80 for shorts. It's like $50 for shorts or $40. So I think that realm, if you can,
they've gone up. I think it's closer to 60 now, maybe even 65 on some of the shorts.
Well, that kind of ruins part of my point. But even so, like if it can last years, and so you brought this one up, but it's the Rabbit 3-inch for shorts. I love these things. I've gotten so many miles on this, and what I love is you can just wash them and tumble dry. And that matters to me too. Like it's easy to take care of. So that from Rabbit. And then the other one, I actually bought these with my own money like 7 years ago. And it's the tights from Rabbit. And I wear them for pretty much all my winter runs. And they don't even make this model anymore. Yeah. But the zippers, none of them have broken. There's no holes. Nothing is wearing down.
Their tights run warm.
And for me, that's great. Like I am a huge fan of these tights. This is one of their fleece ones, but again, they don't make this specific model anymore, but from a longevity standpoint, and I feel like I really got my money's worth because I did get them at least 5, if not 7 years ago. And I've been wearing them all winter long, every single time. The other company overall, besides Rabbit, that I really like, and it's less about the running and more about the running lifestyle crossover, is Path Projects. And one of their shirts, I brought it here. It's like a long sleeve with a hoodie on it. I wear this literally every Saturday. It's like my Saturday shirt. It's just super soft, thin, and it's good to go on like early morning runs in the springtime and the fall. It just is perfect for me in like the 30 to 40 degree weather. It's been fantastic, and it works for casual wear super well. And they also have pants that I wear every Saturday. So like I have a Path outfit, I guess, that I wear every Saturday, which is funny, but they double for lifestyle and for running extremely well. And I find some value in that too. And then my last one isn't either of those companies. It's a shirt you also held up too, but it's the On Performance tee. Yeah. It's just so good. So light, so breathable.
I literally went and bought like no 4 other.
Well, and
wait, did I buy 4 other? No, 3 other.
Well, they
ones,
go on sale sometimes too. Yeah. Like you can get them for like $40 if you time it right. Like it's,
or you get the Onward. They have a pre-owned section on their site, nice, where you could get them for as low as like $20 or $30. That's where I got them.
That's great.
I actually got them as a trial to see, how the quality stood up getting it pre-owned through them. But they came out great. I've got like a dark emerald green.
Oh, cool.
One that's like sweet. Yeah. And then
such a good shirt.
I got a couple of the long sleeves as well, especially because I like the way that one fits because we have the DOR one.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we just want to talk a little bit about that because we do test a lot of them, and we wanted to share like what are the ones that have stood the test of time for us? Which ones do we really like? And if you have apparel that you really like, you should drop it down in the comments if you're watching. I know we held up a bunch of stuff, so if you're on audio, you can jump over to YouTube to see what we held up, just because we're doing kind of both formats. But yeah, comment below and let us know what you really love too, and if there's things you'd like us to test out as well. Before we get to the mailbag, the last thing that we wanted to talk about was something to answer a question that we get at least weekly, at least 3 times a week, if not every single day. And people kind of ask, how can we work with you guys on a one-on-one with Doctors of Running? And so I did want to share how you could contact all of us for Doctors of Running and how you could work with us either virtually or in person. So David, I don't know if you want to start, like if people wanted to work with you as a physical therapist, like how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, sure. I can go over that. So I do work in a traditional outpatient orthopedic practice. I work at Ulta Orthopedics, ALTA, in Santa Barbara, California. We're pretty standard as far as coming in. We do prefer referrals, especially if it's coming from outside of our physician kind of circle, because it's an orthopedic practice. So there's 9 or 10 other docs, and then a few PTs. And if you're already in the circle, super easy. You just ask one of them and they just send you to me. But if you're not, we do prefer a referral. It's not necessarily necessary, but it makes everyone's lives easier. Sure. But if you have a PPO plan, you can. As far as like virtual and out of that context goes, it's been something I've been thinking about, and I'm on the fence. So if someone was like, hey, you should do it for me, maybe I will. I don't know. I've been thinking about that actually, like specifically over the last couple of weeks. So that's why I think it was funny that you brought that up. Because I was like, maybe I should start something, because it wouldn't be a conflict of interest, because we don't do telehealth at my practice, and it would probably be a weekend thing or something for those who can't come during the week or something like that. So I've been dabbling that idea. So that is probably more of a stay tuned.
Yeah.
As of right now, I don't do that, but that might change in the near future as well.
Cool. So just to run you through everybody else. So Andrea runs her own PT practice. And so she does a lot of in-person stuff. So if you're in Connecticut, you can connect with her. You can go to her Instagram, Andrea Myers, MYERS DPT. that's where you could reach out to her. And she does a lot of cycling and running performance stuff. So if you're in person, you can go in and do like bike fittings and like PT with her. The other thing that she does is virtual performance consultations. These are like one-time consultations for running or for cycling. So you can reach out to Andrea if you want to work with her. Matt also does different types of work. So if you are near George Fox University, he sees people in person there, but then he also is doing virtual options for people who are either in California or Oregon, just where he has his licensure. And you can reach out to him at Klein Runs DPT PhD. That's where you're going to find him on Instagram and on social. And then for myself, I help direct Pinery's Running Lab. And so we have some in-person stuff in Stevens Point area in Wisconsin. I'm personally not doing much in-person things right now because my full-time gig is at the university. I run a running clinic just with our athletes at the university. But what I also do is we have online, like longer term one-on-one coaching. And so if you're interested in that, we have a team of PTs who are doing run coaching as well. I would vouch for any one of them. So you could reach out to me at Pinery's Running Lab on any of the socials, and you could just send me a message and I would kind of chat with you about what those options look like to do one-on-one virtual coaching. So there are ways to connect with all of us. It's kind of just what's the right thing for you, if it's a consultation or if it's in-person sessions or if it's coaching. We've got a lot of stuff going on right now. Anything else you want to add there?
No, I guess the only thing would, if someone was trying to be like the person to be the final nudge to get me over that line, I guess my handle, yeah. So yes. I guess that would be Docs of Run David. So DOCSRUN David.
Yes.
Yeah.
DOCS
on IG. Oh, OF. My bad. Yeah. Docs of Run David.
Docs of Run David. Perfect.
Yes. So that's where you could find me there.
Sweet. Well, let's get into the mailbag for the day. We've got some great questions, and this one is actually going to be pretty much only you talking about it because it's a shoe that I have not got my hands on yet. And this is from Phil. They ask a specific question about your trip to Tokyo. He says, one of the differences in feel for him between the Metaspeed Edge Plus and the Metaspeed Edge Paris is that the arch of the Paris feels higher, or maybe the shoe's just narrower, he's wondering, than the Plus. Does the Edge Tokyo arch feel more similar to the Edge Plus or the Edge Paris, or is it just different from both? Either way, he is expecting or guarantees that he'll add the Metaspeed Edge to his collection, but you just hadn't mentioned anything about the arch, so he's just kind of curious.
Living on the edge. I like it. Yeah, thinking about it. So I didn't actually have any arch issues with those two previous models, and they felt decently similar to me between the models. If anything, I almost remember the Edge Plus being more narrow than the Edge Paris, but I could be wrong on that through the midfoot. What I will say is that the new Edge Tokyo model, it fits similar as the Paris, but it is ever so slightly more spacious. There's a little bit more volume in the forefoot. That is definitely noticeable. Okay. And I think that kind of caters into that midfoot a little bit more. So if it felt a little bit too narrow, it might be Goldilocks on this one. It might just be just a little bit more spacious to where it holds that foot in. I don't know if I'd necessarily characterize any of the models as wide, or like overly narrow, especially for like a racing shoe. I feel like they actually have pretty decent fits. But I do feel like the Edge Tokyo is a little bit more spacious than the Edge Paris. Yeah. And when I say a little, I mean a little. Like the fit's pretty similar. Okay. The only thing that's like very noticeable is the forefoot volume. There is more volume in the forefoot.
And the foam is pretty different, right? Like you said that the foam felt like a whole new experience as well. Yeah.
Oh, it's very different. Yeah. Well, the Edge, I think, is closer to the Edge than the Sky is to the Sky, because the Edge feels more familiar. You have a lot more of the Turbo Plus in the heel and midfoot, and then it spoons out into that really bouncy foam in the forefoot. So I think the geometry just feels more familiar to the Edge, especially with the way they placed that foam. I know this isn't a review of those shoes, but there's just a lot more under the heel of that new foam Flat Foam Leap in the Sky compared to the previous version of the Sky. And I felt like those experiences were different between the Skies.
That makes sense.
The Edge experiences felt actually pretty similar outside of having just a way more bouncy forefoot.
Okay. Yeah, because I think sometimes for me, like if the foam changes significantly, the feeling under the arch can also change, even if the fit didn't change much. Like I'm thinking about like the Ortholite in the new Phantom 4 versus Phantom 3, because they softened up the foam. Like I can feel the arch a little bit more because the foam is softer. Again, everyone's experiences are different. And so I was just curious, but it sounds like the amount of the turbo is still the similar.
It's mostly in the same spot.
It's not going to change too much.
It's also wider, like the platform. I don't know. I sent you guys pictures, I think. Yeah, that the heel is a lot wider from a platform standpoint, like a lot more sole flaring. So that might change that relationship as well. But as far as the direct midfoot goes, I feel like they're pretty similar, but it might be a little bit more spacious in the Edge Tokyo.
Nice.
The amount of Edge Tokyo, Edge Paris, Edge Plus.
I know.
Edge.
I haven't even thought that deeply about the nomenclature for ASICS right now with their racing stuff. They haven't gone 1, 2, 3, 4. They've given it based on the release and what they're doing
of where they are.
Yeah.
So we'll probably have an Edge LA then. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, that's just me speaking out of my butt here. There was absolutely zero talk of any of that when I was at the event.
That'd be fun though.
But that'd be kind of fun. Yeah, Edge LA. That'd be
Sounds
cool.
Sounds fun. All right, we're going to move on to our next question. This is from Seth, and they're asking a big running store question. This is what they said. I would love to know your thoughts on the ideal running store shoe fitting process. I'm a store manager at a running store, and we work really hard to make sure that we're providing the best possible service to our customers. We have every customer on the treadmill take a look at their gait, assessing for overpronation, oversupination. They take a slow motion video for that. And they ask a lot of questions to decide exactly what category of shoe they should be in. And then they bring out either 4 to 5 shoes that are in stability or neutral category to have the customer try them on. Would love to know what you would change to your ideal running store fitting process. And yeah, what are your thoughts on that? That's pretty much their whole question. I think it's a great question, and there's a lot there.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a pretty thorough, way to do it, especially at being at a running store. A lot of places just say like, all right, here you go, try on. I think it is easy to get overly systematic as well. But with these types of things, the video is nice, but I think it would also be good to like remind, I always say a client in this case, to not get overly involved on the video either. There's going to be a lot of differences on how people will move shoes or tools, and you'll use them slightly differently based on geometries and whatnot. So I still lean comfort, over everything. And what the shoe that speaks to you is probably the one that you're going to run in the most. But if it helps kind of narrow it down to a few different things, I'm all for it, and I think that does give people a chance to actually try the shoes on and get a little bit of distance on them and kind of feel it out versus running down the hall and back. So that is kind of nice. But I think like checking in with them and seeing how does it feel from a fit standpoint, even before they're on the treadmill, like when they're walking around, and like, does it feel like you have enough space in the forefoot? Does it feel like you have a good hold in the midfoot? Does it feel like your heel's stable? And then getting on and actually running in it and seeing if that matches the subjective reports before you get onto the treadmill, and how that feels with their own biomechanics. So it's like, if it feels really sloppy and clunky, it's like, okay, maybe that's not the shoe for them.
Right.
But then something's going to feel a little bit more cyclical in their gait pattern, and something's going to speak to them, and it's like, I'd love to be like, oh yeah, everything has to be objective and data driven. But like the honest truth is it's almost impossible to do that from a realistic standpoint. Unless you are putting everyone on a Met cart and looking at their running economy when they're running in all of the different shoes that you're selecting. But I think like also giving them an option of both stability and neutral versus like for stability or for neutral. I don't like the or. Because sometimes someone might look like they're pronating a lot, and maybe they are, but they might work a little bit better mechanically with something that is neutral. Like pronation isn't necessarily, I always say this, but yeah, pronation isn't the enemy. Uncontrolled pronation is over longer efforts. So I don't really like the capital or, but that might not be the case. That might be what was typed, and they might be just given what, what people are reporting from their own preferences. But yeah, like working with the client to just slowly work down towards a shoe that both parties feel good about.
Yeah.
Independent of any price or anything or materials or whatnot, or whatever is quote unquote new.
Yeah. No, that's good. My brain goes to a lot of questions that I have first. And unfortunately we're not like talking with Seth, so we don't know the answers to all of these questions. But I think what makes the right process depends a lot on what sort of resources you have with you and what sort of training each person in the store has. Like if you have a lot of people who have been through a lot of training to actually understand what looking at a video of running mechanics means, maybe that's useful. But if you have a bunch of high school kids who are doing a wonderful job customer service wise, but they're high schoolers and they're not trained in mechanics of some kind, that video is probably more performative than it is helpful. And it could actually be more harmful than helpful, because if we don't have a deep understanding of things, we can oversimplify results and tell them, oh, you're a pronator, you need fill in the blank. And I think that sort of prescriptive language can also be problematic. So I think that the best fitting process matches the skill level of the people working in the running store. And the running store manager and the owners are going to have to be the ones that figure that out. Like, how trained is our staff? Like, are we all like kind of run store specialist people, or are we just having kind of like people come in just to make sure that there's someone in there to help people? And again, that's more on y'all to figure that side out. I think too, when it comes to the video, like I do a lot of gait analysis. That's like part of my gig every single week. I love doing gait analysis. And I think if I've learned anything from gait analysis, it's equally more complicated and tells us sometimes less than we want it to. And again, making deterministic links between, oh, this person is a pronator, so they need this kind of shoe. One, isn't backed by the literature, and two, our ability to see that on a 2D video isn't always that great anyway. And just because they're pronating at the foot doesn't mean that they need a foot correction for it. Maybe it's something different. And I think that's beyond the scope of a running store. So if you're going to use video, just be thoughtful about it and make sure that the language used to communicate with the customers in the store doesn't make them think that something's wrong with them. I think that is where my brain kind of goes there. So in my mind, the perfect not, I can't even use that word, but a potentially like way that I would go about fitting if I was working in a running store would be a lot more customer centric. Not to say that their process is not customer centric, but I would want to make sure that it's customer centric in the way that I'm asking them a ton of questions. If they're coming in, they have experience running, most of the time is talking about what they've enjoyed in the past, what has worked for them, what sort of injuries they've had, and what sort of shoes like felt right and why. So asking them questions about shoes that they've had that they might not have thought about. Because like, I like that shoe. Why do you like it? I don't know. Well, did you notice that you like the cushioning? And you start to go through questions that help you know as the store like worker, okay, I'm going to get shoes in this category because they've loved that. And I'm going to avoid these because they've hated that, whether that's fit or foam feel or stiffness or whatever. Like you can tease that out maybe better than they can. So that's what you could bring to the table. So I think even more than the running analysis, I think it's more important to get questions answered. And like you said, David, I wouldn't say that somebody should try just stability or just neutral. In fact, probably better to try both. Like I brought Jana and I my wife and I, we went to the shoe store before we went on a trip where we were going to have to walk a lot. And we brought out a ton of different shoes based on her experiences in the past. Some of them were stability, some weren't. And she would have the foot type and the walking mechanics that would tell you she should be in a stability shoe. And none of them felt right for her in comparison to the neutral. So she got the neutral shoe. We ended up walking like 10 miles a day for 6 days. And she had no problems at all that entire week. And so I think adding variability and options for people to try And just broadening that, making sure that it matches what their preferences are, is more important than the running, especially if there's people who aren't trained to really understand what the mechanics mean. So that's probably what I would say. That felt really long-winded, though. Anything that you would add?
No, that was good.
Rebuttal against me?
No, I was going to add a cheeky sports comment, but there's always room for stuff like that later.
Both of us are just sad NBA. Our teams got knocked out early, so it's fine.
Tough.
Everything's fine. Cool. Well,
Bach's having a time.
Bach's having a great time. At this point right now that we're recording, the Pacers are up 2-0 in the Eastern Conference Finals, which is crazy.
Both games in New York.
They won both in New York. Yeah. So who knows what's going to be happening by the time this releases? Because I think we're on like a 2.5 week delay or something. Anyway, thank you, Seth, for that question. And hopefully the discussion was helpful. Like we said, I think it's a lot more about your specific situation and who you got in your store to figure out what the right process is for you. All right. The next question is from Skylar. And Skylar writes, I'm hoping I can get a shoe recommendation from y'all since you seem to share my love for Zero shoes, which we do enjoy. XERO, Zero shoes. So it's like kind of the minimalist shoes if you're not aware of that. They say this: I'm currently using an Ultra Torin 5, prefer shorter distance racing, 10K max, and they'll be in the 15 to 30 mile range per week for a good while. I have done zero drop barefoot minimalist shoes for about 8 years and run in ultras for the last 4 years. So some cushioning in there. I've not, they're not tied to zero drop for running shoes, but they do like a wider toe box, but it doesn't necessarily need to be ultra wide, ALTRA, not ultra, like extra,
right.
Ultra wide. They prefer a dual shoe at the moment versus kind of specializing in one place or another. They're a mid to 4 foot striker with basically no pronation or supination, but they say that they typically get soreness in their calves and they'd like something that could take a little bit of load off of them. And they also get a little bit of patellofemoral pain and a sore area right in the front of the distal fibular head. So down by the ankle. And so just some recommendations based off of those goals. What thoughts do you have?
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like they're not afraid of both low drops and rockers because Ultra will do that.
Yeah.
So if we're looking to unload it a little bit, but you don't want to put too much of an anterior force forward on the knees. Well, you said the distal fibular?
Well, there's distal fibular, but also patellofemoral pain. So they've got
the
patellofemoral, a smattering.
A little bit of everything.
The first thing they said, though, that sounded the most common was the calf soreness, commonly sore.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to kind of have a familiar geometry, but have just a little bit of a raise, Topo Athletic does have 3 and 5 millimeter drop options. Mm-hmm. If you're used to being down in that zero range and you just want something a little higher. Mm-hmm. That's the first one that comes to mind. And it does have a wider toe box. New Balance does a pretty good job as well, kind of having a wider forefoot as well and having some lower drop options. I know you're a big fan of the Rebel 5. I am as well. Yeah. I know you like it probably for this. I think it might be a little soft. Yeah, I don't know. But
well, that's what I would say. I think Rebel 5 could work, but it would be an extremely different foam experience than you're used to in Ultra because it's so soft and much bouncier, kind of really responsive, 6 millimeters versus 0. So it would be different, but I think it could be an option. But yeah, keep going if you have more.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think, kind of thinking out loud here. I mean, that's really kind of the main one is kind of Topo Athletics where my brain goes. But shoot, I'm drawing a blank, man. How about you go and circle back to me?
I think I have a couple. Like when I think about even sticking in Ultra, the Forward Experience gives you a 4 millimeter drop, mild rocker, semi-rigid forefoot, but it's flexible enough. So I think you'd get just a touch of offloading, and you would get a similar foam experience. You would just get that 4 millimeter offset in the Forward Experience. And then I was thinking Topo as well. And I think that because they want that kind of, from a do-it-all perspective, I think the Forward Experience can do that. Like it's light enough where you can kind of pick up the pace a little bit, but it's not bouncy foam. So it's not going to give you too much, but But if we shift over to Topo, when I think about
Cyclone.
Do It All, I think either Cyclone or the Spectre. The one thing I didn't like about the Spectre 2 was the huge heel bevel. But if they're truly, like if you're truly a mid and forefoot striker, that heel bevel or the heel posterior heel flare won't matter at all. So I think the Topo Spectre 2 would give you a lot of training, heavy, high mileage stuff, and it's light enough and has a little bit of bounce because it's the P-Bax foam from them. So you'd get a little bit of bounce, but it's not so soft. Like the Rebel, like I said, is really soft. Topo's P-Bax is still pretty firm. So I don't think it would feel like too big of a deviation from what you're used to, but I do think it would offload a little bit, even more than the Cyclone, the Spectre would, because it's a little bit stiffer through the forefoot. So those were the ones that really came to my mind that give you that wide toe box, gives you a little bit going on there. Did anything else pop into your head?
I'll come clean here. If you saw me make a face there, my headphones just gave me a weird little noise. So I think they might be on their way out, but I charged it last week. So I don't know what's up, but that kind of took my train of thought for a second, because usually we'll do that shortly before they die. No.
So could be interesting.
Hopefully.
Hey, we're almost done. We only got one more question.
So sorry about that. That is me coming clean there. I would have loved to get an instant replay on that on my face. Just like, what the? But I can still hear you for now. And if I can't hear you, I will let you know.
Perfect.
I'll just read your lips. We'll do it live and we'll see how that goes.
We got one.
My mic still works.
We got one, maybe two more questions. So hopefully we get there. The first one is from Robert. They start their message with this, what's up, docs? Which I found pretty good, clever. They said, are there any detriments associated with running shoes not allowing the lateral midfoot to flatten as much as it does when I'm barefoot? I don't experience any discomfort. I just notice that some shoes constrict a bit and didn't know what the long-term effects that could have.
Yeah, so he's asking like the lateral midfoot doesn't come down as much in the shoes.
Yeah, because he totally flattens out. I'm assuming he's talking about
when he's standing barefoot.
In the barefoot.
Yeah.
Whereas he's kind of feeling like that lateral. So the way I'm conceptualizing it, if you think about your foot, you have two different arches. You have your medial longitudinal arch and your lateral longitudinal arch. The medial one is what we really think about as our arch, like the collapsing, pronating. That happens really at the medial arch. The lateral arch is on the outside of the foot. And that's kind of what he's talking about here. And he's wondering, if I'm held in kind of a more arch maintained position, which would be a supinated position of the foot, long term, is that detrimental?
Depends how extreme we're talking.
Yeah.
Definitely depends. But I don't know. I feel like every shoe on the planet's going to do that to some degree, right? Like you're not going to have quite as much freedom of movement when you have something around your foot. That's just the truth. Yep. But I think as long as you have something that gives you ample space to move, you should be fine. Yeah. Will it be a little bit more restrictive than truly barefoot? It always will be, I think. But it's really just listening to what feels the most natural for you, especially through that midfoot, if that's something you're sensitive to. Yeah. So finding shoes that have just a little bit more accommodation in that region.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that this is definitely a matter of volume and time. If you are just running in a shoe, but you're spending all your time either barefoot, minimalist shoes, or just like anything else that's not restricting your movement, you're probably not going to have problems, especially depending on your running volume. Like if you're running 200 miles a week, that's a different situation than if you're like me and you're running like 20. Those are two very different stimuli. And if you're just restricting movement for that much time in your week compared to all the other time on your feet, it may not be consequential. And like you said, too much of anything is probably bad. Too much water is bad for you. So you want to give your foot time to do lots of different things. That's why we like shoe rotations. And it sounds like if you don't just spend all your time, I don't see any major risks like listening to this, especially if you're not having any discomfort. It's just allowing you to get stimulus through your body. You're working your cardiovascular system. You're working your musculoskeletal system. None of that's going to be bad. So I would say very low on my concern radar for sure. Okay, got one more question for us and then we will wrap it up. David is sending us a question. Not you, David, a different David.
Darn it. Did you cut my question?
I cut your question. I'm sorry. That we get a lot. So they just recently read our review of the ASICS Glideride 3, but unfortunately they're no longer available. Yes, it's a shoe that's been out for a while, and they're looking for a similar shoe that will help with their foot pain caused by Hallux Rigidus. Hallux Rigidus is the inability of your big toe to extend. In the past, they've typically worn Saucony stability sneakers, but now need something with a rocker sole and a stiff forefoot due to the arthritis that they have in their big toe. They also have flat feet and say they have overpronation, hoping you might be able to recommend a few options that could help alleviate discomfort. Thanks for your time and expertise. So I wanted to say a few things on this one first, and then I'll pitch it over to you. So just to make sure everyone's on the same page, ASICS Glideride 3 is a very rockered shoe. The Glideride series was one of the first models that really came out with a rockered sole. And it has a plate in it, so it's still relatively stiff. So it's still relatively stiff. So if you have that Hallux Rigidus, it's going to do what we call the forefoot rocker for you, which means your big toe doesn't need to extend. Usually you need 65 to 70 degrees of extension in the big toe. And so what he's looking for is a shoe that's going to do a similar thing. The good thing right now is that there are a ton of shoes that are carbon plated, which means that a lot of shoes are going to be options for people with a Hallux Rigidus. I've had people who have utilized even the original Endorphin Pro series that wasn't too aggressive for a lot of their daily runs because the carbon plate and the rocker were really helpful. In this case, it might not be the best option given their desire and their history of using more stability shoes. So, David, I don't think picking out some sort of high speed, racing shoe is going to be the option. But there are some other ones that I think are similar to the Glideride 3. One of those, they do have the Glideride Max now. So the only difference is we found that one's a little bit more flexible than the previous Glideride 3. So you may not have as much luck, but it's definitely worth going and trying on and seeing if it could work for you. The second shoe that comes into my mind is one that I don't have a ton of miles in, but Matt has ran in a bunch, or actually two shoes from Brooks. So one of them is the Ghost Max 3 and then the Glycerin Max. Those are two shoes that have a pretty rigid forefoot, no plate, but they do operate off of that rocker a little bit more. So those could be two more daily training type shoes to check out. The last one that is in my head is the New Balance SC Trainer version 3. That shoe has a plate in it, but it's got a pretty flat platform, so it's not going to hold your toe in extension at all. And it has a good rocker that you're operating off of. It's a little bit lighter weight. It does still have a wider platform underneath, but those are the ones that come into my mind that you could consider for a replacement if you want to go try them out.
But when we look at Hallux Rigidus, a lot of times it's that great toe's inability to move, usually due to arthritic changes. And one of the hardest things that it has a hard time doing is extending. And so forefoot that have, very flexible forefoots, a lot of times are very sensitive. And so finding something that's a little bit stiffer and rockered, but doesn't have too much toe spring, if you kind of jam it into extension, sometimes it doesn't feel great. It's kind of finding a balance of those types of geometries. So I think of kind of mostly stiffer rockered shoes for the most part. You just got to be careful with your selection on how it feels on that big toe. We were talking the other day about walking shoes, and when you were going to Disney World, and I was like, "Oh, you taking the Anus?" And he was like, "Oh, a little bit too much toe spring for me." And I was like, "Dang, not for me. They're great. I love them." But that would be an example where it just puts you in just a little bit too much extension than you like. And if you have discomfort there, that's not going to feel so good after a full day of wearing them and or running in them for longer periods of time. Not that that's meant to be a running shoe per se, but we're talking about Anu sequence, AHNU, in that specific model, but finding something that has a kind of a rounded forefoot there that doesn't have too much of a raise in the very front of the shoe, like when your foot's actually sitting in it in the toes. So I would just try a few things. Some people respond really well to, some people just love, let's say a Hoka Bondi or an ASICS Nimbus or some of those classic shoes. Some people just don't respond quite as well to them, but I would kind of say just look at the general themes. try to find something that kind of matches up with your forefoot rocker there as you take a step. And you can always try these shoes on in the store, walk around, run around a little bit, and kind of see what speaks to you and kind of what feels like you're rolling off of that forefoot the smoothest. Because usually you'll kind of know. If you know, like you'll get this jammed up sensation where it just can't extend and it won't feel very comfortable. So
the one thing I'm going to add to David's thoughts there is that some shoes without a plate, so I mentioned a few, Glycerin Max, Ghost Max 3, he mentioned the Nimbus, the Bondi, they're going to start more rigid and they will become more flexible. So if they are feeling slightly flexible in the beginning, they're probably not the good option for you. But like the Glycerin Max in particular doesn't really loosen up as much. It's got a lot of rigidity, but the rocker starts later. So you're just going to have to test out some of these that we mentioned, and hopefully you find one that works for you. I have loved the Glideride series since its first initiation. I think it's been a fun space where maximalist rockers have kind of like taken root. So thanks to ASICS for that entire series. So we are going to wrap things up. So thanks for going on this ride with us and joining us on the mailbag. If you want to submit questions to be considered for mailbags, we do our best to get through as many as we can, but we have such a long list. Please email us at doctorsofrunning@gmail.com, and we will try to add this to our list of mailbag questions. And thanks for joining us today. We'll talk to y'all next time.